All right, today we are going to tackle one of the toughest, most debated ideas in all of Christian thought, John Calvin's doctrine of the human will. And let me tell you, this is a concept that really gets to the core of how we think about ourselves, our freedom, and the choices we make every single day.
So, let's just start with a question that I think we've all wrestled with. How free are you, really? I mean, when you decide what to eat for lunch or who to vote for, are you operating with complete and total freedom? Or are there deeper things going on under the surface? This is the exact dilemma that John Calvin decided to face head-on.
Now, to really get why Calvin's idea was such a bombshell, we have to understand the world he was pushing back against. For centuries, the big thinkers have put human reason on a pedestal, a throne even. So you basically had these two main camps that Calvin was arguing with. On one hand, you had the classical philosophers. For them, reason was a queen and our will was free to either follow that reason or get distracted by our senses. Virtue, that was something you achieved. Then you had many early theologians. They'd say, okay, yeah, sin wounded our reason, but our will can still cooperate with God's help. You had to bring your portion to the table. See the common thread? In both views, humans have a pretty important role to play in their own goodness.
And then along comes John Calvin, and he basically takes a sledgehammer to both of those ideas. He argued that the fall into sin wasn't just a scraped knee for humanity. No, it was a complete catastrophe for the human will. I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? He's not pulling any punches. For Calvin, the whole idea of a free will, at least a will that can choose genuine good all by itself, is just a fantasy after the fall. He calls our natural state miserable servitude, a total loss of spiritual freedom. But here's where it gets really tricky, and it's a super important point. This servitude he's talking about, it's not like someone is forcing you to do evil against your wishes. No, Calvin says we are willing slaves. Our very nature is so bent that our will is already chained to sinful desires. We're not being dragged kicking and screaming. We are willingly and happily walking in the direction our corrupted nature points. So does Calvin even believe in free will at all? Well, yes, but he completely redefines it. For him, free will really just means we sin voluntarily. We do what we want to do, not because someone is making us. But, and this is the whole point, the want-to part of us, our will itself, is a captive. It's bound by what he calls the fetters of sin. It's like saying, sure, you're free. You're free to choose anything you want from this menu, but everything on the menu is poison. Okay, so right about now you might be thinking, wow, so Calvin just thinks humans are totally useless, incapable of anything good? Well, not quite. He makes this really critical distinction to keep us from falling into that kind of misunderstanding. He divides our abilities into two buckets. First, you've got the supernatural gifts. Think of things like true faith, a genuine love for God, real righteousness. According to Calvin, those were completely stripped away in the fall. Gone. But then you have our natural gifts. Things like our reason, our ability to make art, our will. These weren't totally destroyed, he says, but they were deeply, deeply corrupted. And this chart really lays it out perfectly. When it comes to earthly things, running a government, creating amazing art, figuring out science, Calvin says some sparks still gleam. Humans can do incredible stuff in the world. But when it comes to heavenly things, like truly knowing God or understanding righteousness, he says we are blinder than moles. Our brilliant human reason is completely and utterly useless in that department. And get this, Calvin goes even further. He says that even our genius in these earthly things isn't really ours. The incredible talent of a scientist or an artist, whether they're a believer or not, is actually a gift from God's Spirit, given to humanity for the common good. There is just no room for human boasting, anywhere. So, if our will is in chains and we're spiritually blind, what's the way out? What's the solution? For Calvin, the very first step, the whole foundation really, is a brutal, radical honesty about ourselves. Calvin loved to quote the early theologian Augustine, and this line just cuts right to the chase. It's the starting point. To make any real progress, you have to first admit that the only thing you truly bring to the table on your own is your sin. Any good you have, anything you've achieved, is a gift. And this realization logically leads to a path forward. It's a simple path, but a profound one. First, you have to see your own spiritual bankruptcy. Just admit you're broke. Second, you have to stop trying to earn your way out of it. You abandon all self-reliance. And only then, in that place of helplessness, can you do step 3, depend completely on God's mercy. For Calvin, this is the only way the will ever becomes free. It's not something we do, it's something that is done for us. This whole idea of the bound will was, as you can imagine, absolutely revolutionary in the 16th century. And honestly, it's still challenging us today. It forces us to ask some very deep, very uncomfortable questions about who we are. When you boil it all down, what Calvin was doing was launching an all-out assault on human pride. His entire goal was to build a system of thought where it was absolutely impossible for a human being to take even a tiny shred of credit for their own salvation. All glory, for anything good, anywhere, had to go to God and God alone. And that leaves us right here with this massive, lingering question. It's a question philosophers and theologians have been wrestling with for centuries. If our will really isn't free in the way we normally think, if it's bound like Calvin says, then what does that do to the idea of human responsibility? It's a thought that challenges our most basic ideas about justice and blame, and what it even means to be human.